That vulnerability doesn't make you look weak. When people hear you being vulnerable in a story, it helps them to connect to their own courage.
Hey, Creating Maven. I'm Joy Spencer, your reframe specialist, with one important message. Your real work, it's not your job or your career. Your real work is what you create. And what you create is what sets you apart and makes you incomparable. It's your legacy. I'm here to show you a whole new way of working so you can create with your gifts, make a unique contribution, and finally get paid to be yourself. This is Reframe to Create.
You get it already. You know how important it is to learn how to tell your own stories powerfully and in all the different contexts that you find yourself in. But you still have a couple of hang-ups that are getting in your way, and I want to talk about those hang-ups today to help you overcome them. Because being a great storyteller is the differentiator of our times, of any time, really. I know this deeply. I know this more than most things that I know. I've worked with leaders who immediately after we worked on their story and I helped them get their stories out there into the world, they saw doors of opportunity open up for them because of them sharing their story. That's because nothing works better for building a personal brand that makes you visible and referable than telling a powerful story. And if you don't think you need a personal brand, you need to listen to my guest, Diane Diaz, in episode 64, where she shares about the high price that she paid for not having one. But that's a sidebar to today's conversation. So the thing about story and storytelling is it's not just about one story. It's about becoming a more comfortable storyteller. I say comfortable because we're all storytellers and we do it all the time. But there's something that happens to people, and maybe maybe this happens to you, and I see it all the time in corporate, professional settings, all sorts of public settings. As soon as you ask someone or prompt them and say, hey, tell me a story, suddenly everyone's brain freezes up and everyone becomes convinced that they can't tell a story to save their life. And you probably have experienced this, right? Maybe even recently. Maybe that's why you press play on this episode, because you've convinced yourself that you're not a good storyteller or that you're not a storyteller at all. And I assure you, you are. You just have to get more comfortable with it. Because the more comfortable you are, the more stories you'll tell. And the more stories you tell, the more powerful connections you'll build. And the more powerful the connections that you build, the more expansive your influence will be for service and positive impact. And who doesn't want that? But, maybe what's getting in your way is some faulty thinking about storytelling. And I want to tackle them and help you get a reframe. So here we go. 1, you might be getting sucked into story theory and forget that this is a practice. I see this all the time when I do storytelling workshops or coach people to identify and tell their stories. There is so much information out there about storytelling and people are hungry for more. So they are often tempted, and this might be you too, tempted to scour the internet for articles or ask for recommendations for just one more book because they're trying to get their arms around it. And this might be you. But all you're doing is pushing yourself further away. I see people hungry for one more framework, one more tip, when they've done absolutely nothing to put the last one that they learned into practice. And I hope that this is not you, because this mindset that the most important thing about storytelling is that you need to get the right book, a better book, or identify the right framework, that mindset is going to keep you stuck. Storytelling is a verb, not a noun. While theory is helpful and interesting, storytelling is primarily a practice. This is the reframe you need. This is the mindset you need when it comes to storytelling, that it is a practice. If you're spending most of your storytelling time going to more and more classes or reading more and more books and less time actually practicing, then we need to shift the ratio on that, because I can guarantee your storytelling muscles are not growing if you're doing this. I'll be in sessions where I'm teaching a storytelling principle, and I might share a framework or a high-level idea about why storytelling is important. And then I'll say, okay, here's a practical nugget. Okay, folks, now it's time. It's your turn. Let's practice it. And that's when I'll start hearing all these beeps and people sharing comments in the chat. Oh, this was so helpful, so informative, but I've got to drop to another meeting. And I'm like, Why are you doing this to yourself? You are shortchanging yourself when you do that. You are pretty much wasting your own time. That's why I love giving most of my effort and energy and time to those who ask me for storytelling help and who are coming to me because they want to practice, right? They actually want to get it in their bones to get better and to get more comfortable. So if you are going to get better at storytelling, you don't need another framework. I'm pretty sure you've run into a couple that you've not made any use of already. And I've shared some of those on this podcast and even did an entire LinkedIn video series on your guide to storytelling frameworks, which you can check out in the show notes. So you've seen enough. I know you've seen enough. So it's time to start practicing. So that's what I want you to do. Lean into more practice. Get your reps in before you go looking for another framework. Now, another mistake you might be making is to think that you only have one story that gets you all worked up trying to figure out what that story is. I hear this all the time. I don't know what my story is, or I'm trying to figure out how to tell my story. And here's the thing. You don't have one story. You have many stories. And this is a great thing and should not overwhelm you. You have many stories because stories are moments. And you've lived many moments in life that have given you many rich experiences to choose from. So the great news about this is you don't have to break your head finding the perfect story. You can just tell a story for your particular context, a story for that time and for that audience in that space. And you can wonder, well, what's the best story to tell for any given moment or situation? And for that, I've got you in episode 88, where I teach you how to build your story bank. In that episode, I help you think through your different stories so that you can sync up your story moments with a specific context, with a specific audience, and a message that you want to share. So no more breaking your brain about what story you can share when. You don't have to worry about how to know when to tell which story for which moment, because a story bank will help you do that. So check out that episode if you haven't already and get to building your story bank. And if you've already completed your story bank listening to that episode, bravo to you. You might be ready to choose one of those story moments and build it out so that you can start using it in different contexts. If that's you, know that I'm happy to help with that, and we'll share how we can work together at the end of this episode. Let's move on to 3, like the third mistake, right? The third mistake I think you're probably making is confusing the personal with the private. Anyone who coaches you in storytelling will impress on you the fact that personal stories are the most powerful and impactful stories that you can tell. Stories where you're the main character, sharing about a personal moment and taking us through your journey of transformation through the experience. But like many of my clients, you might get hung up on this feeling like being a little queasy and apprehensive because you think an invitation to tell a personal story is the same as an invitation to tell a private story. It is not. And here's the thing. Nobody wants to hear your private story anyway. We don't want to feel, uncomfortable hearing you share something that you're not comfortable sharing, like something that makes you feel ashamed or, will have you curled up in a corner bawling. The type of story that's going to make everyone who's listening to you, sort of like pop out of the experience and start whispering, wait, is she okay? Like, should we call someone? Right? Those stories are not for public consumption. Those stories are for your inner circle. And feel free to keep those to yourself. That's not what I'm talking about when I say personal stories. A personal story is as simple as a story that is about you, set in a personal setting, preferably you outside of work. You in your life having an experience and learning from it. Maybe it's the first time you rode a bike, the time you learned to swim when you were on a high school sports team, the birth of your child, like whatever, right? It's preferable that you are able to share some of your vulnerability in your personal story. And by that, I mean you're just not being perfect in the story or a know-it-all. That's all the vulnerability that we need. Share a story about when you didn't know something or couldn't figure something out, a time when you needed help or support, a story that shows you learning, growing, and changing. That vulnerability doesn't make you look weak. When people hear you being vulnerable in a story, it helps them to connect to their own courage. So Nobody wants to hear what I call triumphal stories, stories that start with you being awesome, everything going well and being awesome for you, and then everything ending up being awesome. Everything is awesome. Like, nobody wants to hear that story. Well, except maybe your mother who loves you. But everyone else is struggling and wrestling with too much in life to be able to stomach that. They won't be able to connect with you if you share those type of stories. And a sense of connection is the greatest gift that storytelling gives. You don't want to miss out on that because you're busy, fighting, tooth and nail to not tell a personal story. If you build your story bank, you'll have an endless assortment of personal stories to share. Stories that help you to be vulnerable without divulging things that are and should remain private. So that's the main thing, right? Like, that's the third big thing. Thinking that telling a personal story means telling a private story when it does not. So the other mistake that you're probably making is thinking that storytelling is primarily about a product and not about the process. To know that you're telling a story is to tell a story of change. It's to tell a story of transformation. I had this clear understanding of storytelling lodged in my brain by Dan Manning, who stopped by in episode 108. And that episode's called The Real Reason Your Story Falls Flat and How to Fix It. And this experience of change or transformation is not just what makes up a story, right? It's not like the composite parts of a story as you go from, setting the scene and, inciting incident and all the stuff that happens, rising action, etc. over the course of the story. It's not just how the story is made up. It's part of the process of storytelling. It's what happens to you, the storyteller, as you do the work of storytelling. You also go through a transformation. You also go through a change. It's not just the change that you're describing in the story. You're also changed by the process of telling a story, especially if it's a personal story that you're working through, revisiting it, rediscovering, recrafting, and designing. And I love this part of the work and doing this with those who are trying to build their stories, because I've seen so many people get restoried in the process of telling their story. Like, they get their stories back, right? That's it. And that's the thing. When you're so focused on the product, right? Like on the story, the end result of just being able to tell the story to an audience on a stage or somewhere, you can miss that what's most important and valuable is also what's happening inside of you through the process. We don't just tell stories. We're made up of stories. And that knowledge comes through in the process. I've always felt this most deeply when I've worked with clients who are building a talk for the stage or to get in front of the camera. And a lot of times the work takes weeks or months to prepare. And I always enjoy the process of getting to know them and their story and watching them come alive as they get to see themselves and their stories in a new way. And by the time we get to the stage or in front of the camera to deliver the story product to the audience, I know that I've had the best part already. I got the relationship with them. I got the connection. I got to be there for the journey and to see their transformation. And that is priceless and irreplaceable. And I don't want you to miss that. I don't want you to miss that when you're on a journey to work through a story. I don't want you to miss all the treasure that's in the process while you're focused on the product. So these are the mistakes that you might be making when it comes to storytelling. 1, being more focused on the product than the best part, which is the gift of transformation that the process of storytelling gives you. 2, shying away from telling stories because you think it means telling private stories. It doesn't. Your personal stories are your most powerful tool for connecting with others. 3, thinking you only have one story to tell when you have hundreds and hundreds, and you can sort out how to approach them with a simple story bank. And finally, getting lost in theory and failing to practice because storytelling is a verb. So I hope these were the reframes you need to get out there and start flexing your storytelling muscles. as always, I am here to help you get better at storytelling because it's an important skill for you to have as a creating maven if you are looking to create with your gifts, own what you create, and tell powerful stories about what you create so that you can get paid to be you and leave a legacy that you're proud of. Whether you want to experience what it's like to have your own personal transformation by tackling the stories that are getting in your way or the ones that are helping you, or if you want to get yourself ready to share your story on a stage, in an interview, or in front of any audience by fleshing out your story bank, I am more than happy and thrilled and excited to work with you. To do that, just check out reframetocreate.com/restoried or email me at joy@reframetocreate.com to learn about which storytelling package is right for you right now. Now that you've got your mind right about storytelling, it's time to get on with it. See you soon, creating maven. Until then, remember to always ask yourself, what will I create?